I'm sick and tired of boring wargaming battlefields, but this new Kickstarter is definitely going to put an end to that with these amazing modular hills, peaks, and mountain ranges. Come and take a look and check out these brilliantly modular terrain pieces, and I'll show you how I got them table ready in absolutely no time at all. I'm Benji, and welcome to Benji's Hobbies. So I personally think that one of the most underrepresented terrain on the tabletop battlefield is mountain ranges and big rocky outcrops, and I guess that's for good reason. Big terrain not only takes up a lot of space, but generally the bigger the terrain, the more easily damaged it is as well, and there's nothing more disappointing and frustrating than putting time and effort into a big terrain piece for it to be ruined in storage all by a clumsy player. But this Kickstarter by Stone Trove turns all of that on its head. The Kickstarter is for a whole host of 3D printable files that are either standalone rocky outcrops, hills, or my personal favourite pieces, these modular mountains that can either be used as individual pieces on their own, or combined together to make some unbelievable long mountain ranges. Now, I did say that these are 3D printable files, and I know that tends to turn off people that don't have a 3D printer, but if you don't have one, then have no fear, as there is a merchant license available for these, so expect to be able to find them from a local vendor. Now, I started printing these off on my own printer, the Creality Ender 3 Neo V2, and as always, this printer did a stand-up job for me. As the pieces are pretty big, it did take a little while to print them, but the result was absolutely worth it. Going for a smaller layer height meant that whilst the print did take longer, I didn't end up with nasty layer lines that might have otherwise spoiled some pretty slick looking scenery. Also, all of the pieces I printed were printed support free, which is a testament to how well these pieces have been designed. Right, so I've laid everything out on the tabletop and there is barely enough room for it all. There is just so much of it here. These really big pieces that are really modular add so much versatility, so I can use them as big mountain ranges or little individual cliffs just as line of sight blockers. So they're going to be really, really cool pieces for the tabletop. I also like some of these ones that are kind of a bit taller, that add a bit of verticality to the game. It means that the models can climb up, that they can kind of stand on top and make for some really, really cool cinematic moments as well. So I'm going to get these sprayed up and I cannot wait to get them painted up and ready for the tabletop. So stay tuned to see how these turn out. Looking at this sheer amount of terrain on the table is pretty daunting, and honestly I was a bit overwhelmed with the amount that there was to paint. So I wanted to make sure that my scheme was not only efficient on time, but also easy to repeat if I wanted to paint more in the future. For a quick and easy paint scheme on big terrain projects like this, you cannot go wrong with using spray cans. But make sure you've got some sort of cover over your work surface, and definitely don't be going and doing it on your mum's dining room table. As always, I turn to my favourite spray cans from the Colour Forge, using standard grey to give a really good initial coat of paint. On the pieces printed in black filament, I tried to leave a little bit of black in the recesses, just to add a little bit of tonal variation, almost like shadow on them. Also, as always, I just want to point out that yes, I am using spray cans indoors, but I do have both doors open and there is plenty of ventilation flowing through the shed, so there's no need to tell me about the dangers of it in the comments. The next spray I'm using is White Bone. Now I am spraying this a little bit more conservatively, spraying at mostly a 45-degree angle and mixing it up with light dusting on some areas and more intense patches on others. Now the lighter patches are looking really stark and probably a little too bright at the moment, but don't worry too much as I will be toning this down with a wash in the next step. Rather than using a pre-made wash, I am instead mixing up my own. Buying pots and pots of wash to cover this much terrain would get very expensive very, very quickly, so a homemade alternative is going to work out a lot cheaper. To make the wash, I'm mixing up some matte medium with water in a ratio of around 1/3 medium to 2/3 water. I'm then adding some black and brown inks to the mix to get the colour I want, and I'd also suggest adding a little rinse aid to the mix as well, as this will help the homemade wash flow into all the nooks, crannies and recesses on the rocks. I used a large paintbrush to cover all of my pieces in the homemade wash. The aim here is to both slightly darken the recesses, but also to help blend in the darker grey with the lighter patches. So I've left the wash to dry on these for a couple of hours now, and already I think they are looking really, really good. If you're just looking for rocky textures or maybe sort of caverns or something like that, then these would absolutely fit the bill. But I'm going to take them one step further and add some extra detail and finessing to them just to make them really pop on the tabletop. The first set of material I'm going to use on these is Geek Gaming Pine Forest ground cover. I've become a big fan of this stuff, and it's a nice mix that closely resembles leaf litter, soil, and with some grass or pine needles mixed in. I used the fast drying basing glue and spread it out with an old brush in patches, focusing around the base of the rocks and any large flat areas before sprinkling the ground cover over and letting it dry fully. Once dry, I knocked off the excess base ready and mixed up some PVA and water to give me a thin mix, roughly a 1:1 ratio of glue to water. This will make it a lot easier to apply it onto the rocks with an old brush. I coated this over some of the base ready patches, making sure not to apply too much in too big a patches. I mixed up a couple of different types of static grass, both in colour and in length, and used my Warworld Scenics applicator to apply this over the glue. Now this has been one of my favourite hobby purchases over the last couple of years, and I just absolutely love the way the static grass stands up, and it just makes it look so realistic compared to just throwing down the grass. Finally, I added a few darker tufts in various patches. These really contrast with the rest of the static grass and really read as different vegetation or small shrubs. I'm also a glutton for these small white flowers as well, so I'm adding a few sporadic ones here and there as little accents on these pieces. They're mentioned in The Lord of the Rings as growing on the barrow field of the Kings of Rohan, so it's just my little nod to this. And with that, they are all done, and I couldn't be happier with how these have turned out. The super simple paint scheme and the minimalistic grass and decor really stand out and will make for a super interesting battlefield to fight over. Overall, I'm absolutely in love with this Stone Trove Kickstarter, and before anyone starts pointing the finger, I have not been paid for this video. I simply loved the look of the product, and when I reached out to Dana, he was more than happy to help me out with the files, so yeah, no money has changed hands here. Make sure you go and check out the Stone Trove Kickstarter, which you'll find the links to down below. It really is an incredible set of STLs, and I hope you agree that they look absolutely stunning when painted up. A huge thanks to Dana from Stone Trove for helping me print all of this out. There is absolutely no way I could have got all this done by myself in time, so big thank you. I've listed all the stuff I've used in this video down below, so go and check it out. And whilst you're down there, why not take a look at my affiliates and Patreon as well if you want to help the channel out a little bit. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.